we'll both kind of talk a little bit about the propaganda we've been hearing from Trump and the White House and everything in between. And then I want to kind of have you give a reality check from someone who is a former, operative, and someone who's been in that region, a little bit
Yeah.
about, kind of reality check what's going on here, but immediately tie that into how that relates to investing.
Hmm.
As you no, we've been really working and building a portfolio based on this situation. I have been in touch with several folks from the investing side who, investment planners who are just not really taking advantage of the situation at all. So I want to kind of recap
Well, they
what
aren't
we've
even.
gotten
They're not.
into. And
Yeah, Danny. Are they're not even like prepared as far as like even risk goes. Is that accurate from what you
that was
said?
my
Like they're not
take.
even.
Yeah, that was my take is that they're basically planning on this for all of this to blow over more or less unscathed within like 3 months. And the anticipated return, and I quote, I won't give you the name, but I this is a direct quote, was that, in the past we've been really killing it with stocks. We've been well above the 12% benchmark, so we look for 8% this year. So an 8% return.
So that's not just complacency. It's like that's like super complacency.
That's like super
That's like
complacent.
that's
Yeah.
like yeah, that's sleepwalking off a cliff, basically. Because if they had any idea of this situation, they yeah. To be honest though, Danny, I kind of wonder if I say I told somebody with that level of complacency, I do wonder if I even broke it down, like I sent you that breakdown about how I gamed all this out. I gamed this out a long time ago, but I even gamed it out that I sent you with the benchmarks and
Yep.
so forth for the prices and everything else. If even I did all that and did all the math, I doubt somebody that's that complacent if their brain would be able to understand how big
Yeah.
you see what I'm
I,
saying?
I
I
I
don't
kind of
think
break it
they,
down like
yeah,
the Epstein files. It's like some people, you could present them proof of like the egregious stuff that
yeah,
happened, and they're
and
just
they
going to be
couldn't,
like, they
yeah,
just
they
shut
couldn't
off. They're
accept
just
it.
like,
Right,
okay, and then back
right.
to work, right? It just, there's
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
it just is what it is. I'm sure if you get in front of the right people at the firm, I'm sure that there are people who are looking at this. It's just when you filter down to the grassroots, boots on the ground, people who get in front of clients every day. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're in that camp.
well,
So
yeah,
so
like I saw this as I mean, as you know, like I saw this coming way ahead of time, and like the way I mean, I'm new at even the trading thing, but just the this, and I'm out all equities now. I've I'm just except for the U.S. land-based oil, gas, and
sure,
fertilizer
sure. So I definitely
stuff.
wanted to get
Yeah.
into that. I think he's saving that for the end, but I wanted to kind of warm it up
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit about, like I said, the propaganda that we've been being fed, and from your perspective, having been in that region, exactly what the dick slap of reality could hold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what propaganda? Because I'm
Yeah,
not
so
sure what your infosphere looks like. I
So
don't
I,
see a
I'm
whole lot of
mainly
propaganda.
referring
So.
to, well, first of all, I don't watch legacy media. Anybody who's been following me for a significant amount of time, or a friend of mine, should know that. However, I was at a neighbor's recently, and I'm seeing, Fox News and all these legacy media outlets kind of painting it like we're winning. They're showing that the the Iranian Navy's decimated, and
Uh-huh.
factoids like that. And then you hear Trump posturing like, "Oh, they want to make a deal so bad, they're basically begging us to." Yet, in the same sense, we have that we sent. I believe the figures were 6,000 ground troops and planning on a follow-up of 10,000 ground troops. That's all public. That's all public, right? So,
Hmm.
so right there, we kind of have a little bit of a disparity. Like, if things are going so swimmingly, why are we, allocating such ground troops? And also, if we're winning so bad, why does the timeline keep being extended? right? So we went, this was only supposed to be like a weekend operation. It was extended 4 weeks, then 6 weeks. Now we're looking at 3 months. And, we can see where this is going, right? So I kind of wanted to frame what I call the propaganda anyway, because just from my own personal research, I don't see that being the case.
Yeah,
So I wanted to kind of
yeah,
kick
we
it
can.
over to you from someone who's been over there, who understands the military. What do you have to say about all those things?
Okay, so from what I have gathered is, yeah, Trump will make threats usually on a Friday, and then start to walk those threats back. Uh, you know, and at least from what I've seen in the markets is, I'm kind of shocked at the complacency in the markets, to be quite honest, because when you actually look at what's happened and what's been happening, and you associate like Trump's walk back statements with the markets, he has done a pretty good job of talking the markets down from the ledge, so to speak, which makes sense. I can understand that. But the only problem with that is you can only do that for so long. And not just that, but the the material reality is already set in. It just depends on what country you're in. Like for instance, countries like the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, just to name a few, Indonesia. They're just they're on Australia, I think too, actually, rightfully so. They're in states of emergency. They're already rationing. They already have
Wow.
export bans. They've limited the workday to a maximum of like 8 hours, 3 to 4 days. They've already cut back on government services. They've really, but they have to, because I think they get anywhere from 70 to like 97% of their fuel, and just fuel and fertilizers, uh, from that region. So if you're there, I mean, I'm not there. I do know some people there. Like the Philippines and Thailand in particular are really bad right now. They, it's From what I've heard, the rationing and so forth is actually worse than the COVID period, um, already. And I don't know if Australia is in a state of emergency, but they should be if they're not already, because I believe Australia only has about 30 days worth of fuel now. Um, Australian crops and stuff like that, they're done, because that's where they got their fertilizer from and so forth. So the material reality is already set in, depending on region. Now, the United States, I think it's weird that we haven't. I think part of it is Trump keeps on wanting to, and this is the hard part when you talk about propaganda, because it's like, if you're I'm sure there's an element in the Trump administration where there are people that understand like how bad it is. However, at the same time, if you panic, that can be the worst thing that you can do, because then markets panic, then people panic, and so on and so forth. Then things can be worse just based on the panicking, right? But the problem with that is, if you keep on just sort of, again, where's the actual end state here, right? Like what's the end mission? What's the end goal? And does Trump even know himself? That's where we talk. We run into the issue where you have the boomer syndrome coming in, where maybe he is talking to people and he's convinced, based off of what whoever says what to him last, he's convinced that maybe, like, here's what's actually going on. There's no way the Iranians are going to negotiate. That's not happening. That hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen. Here's why. The last, uh, man, it goes all the way back to even before Soleimani. But as you know, the U.S. has a long footprint in the region. We have The United States and Israel has a long history of assassinating political leadership, as well as military leadership, both civilian and military, right?
Mhm.
Um, Now, the reason why that's such a big deal is because what Trump has already established a habit of, both with Russia and Iran, is under the guy, and this is a real big problem moving forward too, as far as like the influence and capacity for the United States to even negotiate with anybody moving forward. The whole Maduro thing was even an attack that we were supposed to be negotiating, and then under the cover of the negotiations, we used that to sort of have them leave their guards down, so to speak. So then we could sneak attack. And Trump did that twice in this situation with Iran, right? That's, I mean, part of the reason why the Ayatollah was killed in the first place. So the very last thing the Iranians are going to do is negotiate with the United States again, especially if you're talking about the people they were just negotiating with which were Witkoff and Kushner. Okay, so they're just that's just not going to happen. Now, feasibly, the only way you could potentially get a deal is you would have to go through an intermediary like India, Russia, or Pakistan. From what I hear, the United States has been hearing from the Pakistanis. Okay. The issue with that is, though, there is no actual negotiation with the Iranian state. So, what you have to understand about this game of telephone that happens is uh, the leaders in Pakistan, the government officials in Pakistan, they have their own interests,
Sure.
right? So they have their own goals and missions and things like that. So what the United States hears from them, there's no way for us to really know if that's just something they're saying for the benefit of how true it is, whether it's falsifiable, or who that really even benefits.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? When you have an intermediary like that and you're not dealing with the person
Mm-hmm.
themselves through that game of telephone, right? You it's hard to actually gauge
Mm-hmm.
what's feasible and what's not. So it's very possible that the Pakistanis could be playing both sides of it, telling the United States, you understand, like, oh, they're begging for a ceasefire, they're begging for that, yada yada yada.
Yep.
Say they just want to be smartasses. They'd be like, we want Trump to embarrass himself because the Pakistanis, they have a similar cultural slash religious
Ties,
as I ties as
yeah.
Iran does.
Mm-hmm.
So they could, oh, you dumb Western, oligarch. Uh, they could be setting Trump up just to embarrass him on the political
Sure.
stage because that could benefit them. You see what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
So,
So
yeah, absolutely.
so they
So
could
there's
just be giving him false signals just because they want Trump to embarrass himself.
exactly. So there's a series of factors which might indicate that things not only are not going so swimmingly, but there's a lot of challenges on the horizon. So this brings us to the potential boots on the ground situation with the Strait of Hormuz and the surrounding mountain regions. Why don't you kind of give us a breakdown of how difficult and or impossible that would be to actually launch a ground or sea or both offensive?
All right. If the United States is, I don't know if it's true, but did Trump postpone that move to hit them hard with ground troops or something like
So
that?
the
Or is
the
he
last I've heard, troops are being deployed, but there has been no formal statement about, as of now, about an actual attack. But he is, and this part of what happens, what and why I classify this as propaganda is like, he says one thing, does another.
right? No,
You hear
what
one
is
thing.
happening is we're removing Marine expeditionary units into the region.
Yes.
From what I've heard is forces have already accumulated, but they're waiting for another, I believe, battalion of Marine expeditionary units
Yeah.
to
So the
get
first
there,
was
and that should be there
6,000.
by next Friday.
Yeah, I believe you're talking about the second phase, from what I've heard. So the first phase is going to be there imminently. 6,000 ground troops, I believe Marines. The second wave is going to be 10,000. So that should be
Right.
so
Okay,
we
that
have a
makes sense
total of
then.
16,000. No
Either way,
actual
that's going
formal
to
plans
fill.
of commitment, but they're going to be in the region. So that's kind of giving you an idea that,
Now that could either be the worst or best thing to happen. Here's why. I do not think Trump is going to sort of have a come to Jesus moment all of a sudden and realize that we're not just in a dangerous situation. Right now, the United States is in a dilemma. A dilemma meaning that there's no real good options right now.
Hmm.
They're all just various spectra of bad option, right? It's all going to be bad. It's just how bad and for how long. If the United States commits troops for some sort of a land operation, uh, that is probably one of the worst things you can do for several reasons. If you just do the basic math, if you're trying to actually get the nuclear material uh, that the Iranians still possess, you're trying to change the regime, right? And you're trying to dismantle their missile capability. That means you need boots on the ground, but essentially you're going to have to occupy the entire country, which is 4 times the size of Iraq, by the way. It's covered in all sorts of really, really intense, rugged mountain ranges. And where Hormuz is, it's all just one giant cliff line. I've never seen naturally defensive fortifications that extreme other than when I first went over to the UK.
Yeah, this is kind of what I wanted to really focus on here is because what I think is a lot of people just don't understand that this is a very different landscape from Afghanistan, Iraq. You know, you're talking about essentially a natural barrier wall all around Iran, by the way. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
Hormuz, it's the entire region, which is why for thousands of years Iran or the Persians as going back in time have been so difficult to conquer. And I believe I the Roman general who did so, his name is escaping me at the moment. He only held it for like 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So could you maybe go into a little bit about the geography and what the challenges that pose for boots on the ground?
Okay, so there's um, Iran, the if you're looking at Tehran, which is right up here, here's Hormuz. This is all cliff face here, dotted with islands. Okay, the Straits of Hormuz is specifically about um, that area is roughly anywhere from 200 to 20 miles long. At the most narrow, it's about 20, which isn't that's a very narrow passage.
Yeah.
Okay, now the problem is if you're going, you hear a lot about Karg Island. I don't buy that. That doesn't make any sense to me in a military sense because you would have to go serpent your way all the way up through Hormuz, through that deadly strait. And by the way, the cliff faces are just honeycombed with outlying missile defenses, right? So not only through the cliff edges and stuff, you can hide launchers and stuff like that that you can't see from above, but they have underground missile cities with sort of like caverns you can launch from, and they're literally facing out towards Hormuz. Okay, so it's just a wall with which is natural fortification with just like honeycombed missiles aimed right at Hormuz. Okay, which you can launch drones through, you can launch missiles through, pretty much anything. Now, if you're going to invade Iran or stage something in Iran, you actually want to go, it's going to be southeast in what we call Baluchistan, where the Baluchis are, which is like a tribal enclave in Iran. And that area is sort of like flat desert. Okay. And the elevation is not that high. There's actually sort of like a beachhead, it's not sheer cliff. The problem with that is if you're going to then move into Iran from there, it's all surrounded by mountain ranges and then little valleys if you're going to get through. Okay. And not just that, but if you set up in Baluchistan with a bunch of Marines, the problem is then since that's largely hills and deserts, there's not a lot of natural fortifications for your troops to then hide in either.
So
And
they're sitting
one
ducks,
fear,
basically.
exactly, and the fear that I have is, the IRGC, which they have roughly a million, like we're talking like a million dedicated troops that have dedicated their lives to defending the regime, and they have a very strong religious impulse where they will die for the cause. They will martyr themselves.
Exactly.
Now
So on the other hand, where our troops, as far as what I've heard, maybe you could maybe you could provide your opinion on this, but the morale isn't exactly the highest. And even if it was, we're still not looking at the level of conviction because this is like quite literally a spiritual conviction in these
right,
troops.
right. No, no. The Yeah, all the active duty people that I've spoken to since this began, they're first of all they're not confident in the leadership. Number one, but also they're either scared or angry because they're all getting deployment orders, but they don't know for what.
So it's
They don't
basically
even know.
the administration is just kind of Ouija boarding its way through this.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I would be either scared or pissed off too. But the problem is they also even recently, for whatever reason, they haven't updated the training. So, if you're Army infantry or even special forces, the United States has not really participated directly in, 20 full blown 21st century sort of I guess the best analogy would be what's still happening in Ukraine. The overall structure of things is entirely different because you have to worry about FPV drones, drone assaults, artillery, missiles. Just it's a whole different suite of uh, of engagements there and tools. The United States has had drones for a while, but not in the way that like Ukrainian FPV drones or the Shahid drones, which is what they've been using, or they recently Iranians just got an upgrade from Russia, which is called the Garan 2, which is like an upgraded Shahid drone, right? And the problem with the drone warfare is, say you have 10,000 Marines in Baluchistan, and they're even getting a bunch of they're training and getting Baluchis geared up to go invade into Tehran or something. Like, um, there's the Iranians really they would the only reason the Iranians would send infantry there is because they would want a piece of Americans
Mhm.
themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what they could easily do is just stay covered and then use those Garand drones and those Shahid drones and just rain drone. I mean, they've got hundreds of thousands of these things, and they're portable. So I mean, they could just you know fire mass fleets of these things over in an area with a whole bunch of U.S. troops that essentially have no hardened cover or no cover at all because it's largely desert,
Hmm.
right? So, like I said, it's a dilemma. It's not even like a problem to solve. It's either you go through the Baluchistan route or even invade through another sector where there's flat land, or you try to bring troops up in over a cliff face. Which, if you thought Normandy was nasty, I mean, try getting over those cliffs.
Yeah.
As there's missiles and drones and small arms fire coming your way. It's just going to be a slaughterhouse. So it goes to tell me that there really has been no planning in this because there's no real good route to go.
So I think that this
Um,
is an excellent place where we can kind of segue into what are the geopolitical and economic impacts of this. I know, for example, they are, last I heard, the Iran was letting Chinese tankers through and charging, a fee in yuan. Right. So we're starting to see this shift away from the US dollar in terms of oil, in terms of trading and buying and selling oil, especially in that region. So, can you maybe kind of give us a little segue into what that means long term for the U.S. markets? And if possible, maybe share with us some of your selections, your stock selections, and that have benefited because of this
The
already and in the
yeah,
future.
the the geo strategic and geoeconomic implications are far reaching. Like that joke I told you earlier, it's like, when Trump, said he wanted regime change in Iran, like I didn't think he was talking about like, financial or monetary regime, but it seems like that's what we've, again, it's not one of those things though that like if anybody with any knowledge of geopolitics could have told you that this was going to happen, where the Iranians are not only charging a toll, and here's the problem is it's like, well, how do you militarily open Hormuz? Uh, you don't. I I don't see a military option that is available to us to do that. The only way you're
Mhm.
really going to get any long lasting anything I mean, because think about it, like, first of all the stuff we hear about, oh, we've decimated and obliterated their military and whatever, when you actually look at like what they've been still capable of doing with shooting down US and Israeli aircraft, still what they've been capable of doing with essentially controlling Hormuz at will, and how they're still able to launch drones and missiles either into Israel or GCC countries. Uh, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that their capabilities have. And look, as long as they have a mosaic structure there. So even if you say nuked Tehran, right, where their central governing is, there's still 31 to 36 mosaic uh, military districts that are largely underground that have their own fuel, food, water, and manufacturing capabilities, where they can independently keep up the fight and maintain control of Hormuz uh, indefinitely. Now, again, the only way you're going to get in there and stop any of that from potentially being a threat in the future is if you put boots on the ground. But the number of boots you would need is probably around 3 million, because the general rule is if you're an offending force, it's strategically easier to be the defending force, right? Because you can just pop shot people as they're coming in. In order to take ground and control ground, you need at least 3 to 1. Well, we know the IRGC standing now, or even before the conflict, had roughly 1 million fighters. So that means we would need
A lot of
3
people.
million, right? 3 million in order to occupy the place, in order to dismantle all of that. And even then, that would take a tremendous amount of time. Uh, and that's where I think this stuff with the draft is actually quite likely, depending on how many casualties we take and how far we want to push this, how far we want to test their resolve. Because, we don't have 3 million ground troops, but that's what would be necessary in order to actually get a
So you
mission
say
accomplished
3
here.
million. Yeah, that's
Yeah, 3 million, right? That's a
okay.
lot of that's a lot of boots,
It's a
right?
big number. It's a big number.
Yeah, and that,
Uh,
which
s-
means, I mean, if you're gonna look into who manufactures U.S. military boots, maybe that would be a good investing opportunity,
so
because that's
so
a
I
lot
know
of
that
boots that need to go on the ground.
we have discussed quite a bit about some opportunities about that aside from the military boots. That's one that we might want to look into. But so what are like say three stocks that you looked into that you've already gotten a decent return on, and maybe your outlook for where we can go in the next couple weeks.
Um, okay, so the way I was looking at it was this is an actual World War III scenario. Now I had military industrial stocks, but I actually ended up selling those to create space because equities are going to fall.
And it's gone. So this is not OXY. I switched the chart to the S&P. As I commented today, for those of you listening, I comment on the markets every morning. And we basically were at this kind of flirting with this kind of support level here, between 64.18, 63.84. And as you see, we just took a giant shit toward market close, and it's pretty much been a steady sell-off. These are my indicators, call them KMI, Kovac momentum indicators, and basically what we're
It's
there.
breaking past all those, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it's just right. This is the S&P index right now, but as we all know, that's a proxy for kind of all stocks. So I think this is lending credence to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, not just that, but if you want to get into the AI stuff, the energy aspect of the AI investment is literally like up in smoke already because the
So I
infrastructure
know.
in Qatar and elsewhere has already been largely destroyed.
So I know that
So,
we've been hearing about the AI bubble popping, and this is a chart of NVIDIA, which is kind of like the golden child as far as stocks are concerned for AI, right? Because they
all
make
right, the proxy, yeah, the
correct,
AI
yeah,
proxy.
yeah. So, and if you look, we have actually a really good head and shoulders here, which looks like we're kind of hanging by a thread. If I may here just draw a quick representation of that. It's a little off the cuff here. So if we see this head and shoulders pattern, and if you see this is on a day chart, so you see these nice fat red bars. That's a good strong indication of bearish momentum. And how we
Mm-hmm.
play that is with my favorite tool anyway, which is Fibonacci's. So if I do an inverse Fibonacci projection here, we actually get some really good targets. So this is going to bring us into some practical plays that we can take, not only in terms of shorting opportunities, but maybe if you believe you want to get this at a lower price, these are some ideas that we could throw out, right? So the extensions are coming down to 151. That's a nice round number, 150, and 134. So I'd say anywhere in here are pretty decent targets. Again, if you're shorting, maybe that's a target where you wanna buy back, or if you're just looking for a nice entry, the AI bubble got away from you, and you didn't want to buy up here. Always a smart decision not to buy at the top. Then I'd recommend looking down at these two levels here. So
Sure, but let me one comment on that, Danny,
sure.
is the what we have to realize is I already talked about how difficult or impo- look the only way I could see this regime like we're in the mix of a real long-term change. Largely, it's going to be away from the USD and more. China has its own issues, of course, but I can see China and Russia, the GCC countries, potentially having long-term engagements with them instead of the United States, specifically due to what's happened now. Now, here's the only issue: is like South Korea and Taiwan. We've already moved our arsenal from South Korea over to Israel and the GCC countries.
Mhm.
So we're already taking arms away from Ukraine and places like South Korea, which South Koreans aren't very happy with. But Taiwan and South Korea, as long as the United States, especially, is engaged in this conflict, they're for the most part, I don't want to say sitting ducks, but they're highly vulnerable, and those are strategic nodes for all sorts of reasons. Taiwan specifically for chip manufacture. So as long as this is going on, um, Taiwan specifically and chip manufacturing as a whole is a very risky bet overall because we're not sure where that's going to go in the future, not just because of the energy instability, but because, um, I mean, they're already in states of emergency when it comes to fuel,
Yeah, so I
right?
think
So
that the play might.
manufacturing there is already is already
So,
strategically
so I
sort of like a
think
risk.
what you're saying is, maybe if you did get in on Nvidia or any kind of chip manufacturer, take your profits and sit this one out for a little bit because we're looking at some headwinds.
If
Um,
I did, I mean, if I had gone into those, absolutely, yeah. When it comes to manufacturing, anything out of like Japan, South Korea, or Taiwan, yeah, I'd be out. I'd be out already.
yeah, good call.
But here's the problem: is like the only way I see this really coming to an end would be if the United States did take incredible casualties, and then Trump that finally Trump had an oh shit moment where he's like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going well, finally, and then realizes it, and then removes troops from the region, and then actually engages in real negotiation through say Russia, India, Pakistan, or some other third party that could host
Yeah,
such. But they would have to be. It would have to take a lot in order to get them to come to the table.
something just short of a
Um,
miracle, basically.
Right. For instance, like here's a fair trade in my book. If strategically, if Trump said, "Okay, tell you what, Putin, uh, we're going to take away all of our support for Ukraine. It's gone. They're not going to get any targeting info. They're not going to get any money. They're not going to get any whatever. Right? You can have Ukraine. We're out of it, 100%. You know what I mean? If he did that and said, if I will start that process, but we will, make a long-term deal about a strategic peace if you can get Iran to come to the negotiating table, and we can actually have move forward with dialogues about, how to move forward. That's the only realistic
Mhm.
sort of quid pro quo that I could see strategically taking place here.
Yeah.
Uh, otherwise, it's just going to be a quagmire.
So
And we're
with
talking
that,
about like we're not an energy apocalypse, but I mean, what do you call it when 20%? Well, you have to realize too, from the Iranian side, they haven't even activated all of their assets. They still have the
yeah.
Houthis they can activate, which shuts down all of the trade that happens around Saudi Arabia and the Red Sea.
So that brings us into another
So,
selection that you had mentioned, Occidental Petroleum. Why don't you
yeah.
kind of give a little background about this and why that's looking sharp?
Yeah, I like Coke. I have Permian Resources, Devon Energy, Occidental, which is OXY. Those are in my portfolio. These are the only equities that I own, actually.
So,
And
and we are looking at that chart at the moment right now. So,
Yeah, and I got that 3 months ago because I saw this happening. So I don't know where that is on the time horizon, but it was dirt cheap when I got it. It was nice.
yeah, and just a side note, I was kind of um, being a dick. And we have a saying, "Don't be a dick for a tick." So I believe you recommended it to me when it was in the 50s. We're talking about like down here somewhere, and I was like,
No,
I'm
no,
gonna wait.
it was way below that. I think it was in the 30s.
Yeah, well, I was waiting for a decent retracement whenever that was, and as you see here, I just never got it. So if
Yeah.
you are waiting to kind of wait for a retracement, then we're looking at maybe to the 618. That's a reasonable one. If you're a little bit more aggressive, the 786, which would put you at 5973. However, personally, this one is one that I may just ape into. I usually don't do this. I'm usually very much against FOMO, but this might be one where we want to take advantage of it while we can because this is going to fly high with the present situation, and maybe you could tell us more a little bit about strategically why that is the case.
Yeah, the ones that I do like the most, which is why I did pick OXY, is I was like, okay, in a even in a world war, we're not there yet. We're still in a regional conflict, but you're talking about the Strait of Hormuz is a risk, okay, and it's essentially shut off at the moment, and it's I don't see that changing really anytime in the near future at all. I mean, months probably, yeah, at least. But anyway, even what I liked about OXY and Coterra, as well as others like Permian, is they have a lot of onshore, not
Mhm.
offshore oil rigs, right? And they're oil and natural gas. And the reason why that's important is because in order to make up the difference in the oil supply, right? Oil has to go higher as it has gone higher. I'm actually surprised it says low as it is still, but I honestly I don't know how much longer it's going to stay as low as it is.
So
To be
speaking
quite honest,
of Coterra, this is one that we kind of war gamed, no pun intended, together, and one that, unlike Oxy, I was able to get a decent price on. And as you see the red line here, I believe that that was my price at 28.84. So you see, it's doing really well with respect to that. Let's just talk a little bit about the technicals here. We had a nice little range here. When you're able to break out the range. And by that, I mean in between roughly 22 and 27-ish. And you're able to sustain it. Keyword sustain it. That's usually a very bullish sign. Now we're coming up to highs here at 35, 36.59 thereabouts. If we're able to best that and stay up there, then this is a very, very solid bet. As you see, the KMI are raging right now. And so yeah, just the technicals are telling us that this is something we might want to look at. And again, this key zone here at highs, if we could break that and sustain it, we're basically off to the races. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you about your thoughts on Coterra, because you mentioned that earlier, and that's one I
yeah.
definitely.
The what I really like about the onshore um, investments is especially with the tech the United States has, we're really there's still quite a bit of gap. When I looked into the patents that we have available or that have been filed in the tech that's available to U.S. companies, um, we're able to both when the oil starts to run low, especially in areas like the Permian reservoir, which is still fairly full, to be quite honest, we're able to make up that difference in natural gas. So you can get dual natural gas oil plays out of that. Okay. So uh, what I like about the onshores in the Permian too is, I mean, unless there's somebody that's going to have boots on the ground in the United States, those are about as physically safe an infrastructure as you can possibly have.
Right.
Okay. Now, what's good about, say, US versus, say, Russian oil is our refining capabilities are way, way, way higher. Plus, our efficiencies when it comes to drilling, when it comes to pumping, when it comes to pretty much everything is way higher. Like Russia has plenty of oil, but we have the technical expertise to get more juice from the fruit. Okay. So if we actually have a run, this is where this I actually think these sort of plays that I have, the reason why, like, the only sales I have in them is if they like 4 or 5x. And
Mhm.
even then I'm not getting rid of all of the shares. You understand? Like
Yep.
that's just me to show like to like sell one share or two or whatever. The reason for that is because me personally, I think this is the new geostrategic play. The
Yep.
United States, when you actually do the math behind it, and I do know some people that are in the industry as well. Part of my game B groups, actually, a lot of oil people. Um, they the United States, with what we have in natural resource wealth, especially in the Permian, as well as other regions in the continental United States, we are, if we apply our full technology to it, we're an energy gigapower, right? That is, if we had further exploration, if we had, if we build more infrastructure and there is a demand, right? We can actually build that infrastructure to double, triple, quadruple that demand, right? So there's a lot of what I'm trying to say is in the continental United States. there's a lot of room to grow forward with the natural resources that we have and the technical expertise that we have at hand. Now, what's interesting about it is I would say the overall price of commodities, because I'm actually a tech, like an engineering technical guy. The overall price of commodities, I would say overall, if you just baseline it due to our technical expertise and what's available, it's actually going to be lower long term. Okay. Here's the problem is right
Mhm.
now, there's a rewiring of the geopolitical infrastructure, right? So the infrastructure will have to be built and invested in first, right? But due to what's happening now, there's definitely a demand for it. So there's
Yeah.
plenty of space to grow, is what I'm trying to say. And that's why I like the only problem that I didn't like about a lot of the energy companies that are Gulf specific is those are more vulnerable to say South American rebels or Russia, China, or in a war scenario. That infrastructure is potentially vulnerable to attack or sabotage,
Yeah.
right? But all of our onshore stuff is not. So that's
Right.
why I've looked more. My preferred play. I'm not against the plays in the Gulf, but my preferred place are the onshores,
Yeah,
the
and
Permian and
as
the
we're
Pacific.
looking at right here, this is a chart of oil. If you read my predict commentary on this every day, you would know that 100, 101, 46, those are very strong highs, very strong levels, and we've just sailed right back to test those after this brief little sell-off here. So it does look like the markets are at least kind of slowly starting to price some stuff in. And like we said, if there's going to be continued Middle East conflict, the silver lining is that at least we have some good onshore plays, in terms of the ones we just described. But we're wrapping up on
But
time
my
here.
Yeah,
Yep,
but
go ahead.
my point with this, Danny, is look, I had actually I can't say I'm disappointed in the purchases that I've made. Obviously, almost everything's between like 10 and 20% up, but like even these oil is still incredibly low. From when
Underpriced.
I
Yeah,
did the
undervalued for
math of
sure.
everything, it should be, I mean, fair value roughly should be about 150 by now at least, but
Yeah. Yeah,
they've
if
kept
they're
it pretty low.
accurately accounting for all the
Right.
issues that we're facing, not the least of
Right.
which would be the tectonic regime change, pun intended,
Mm-hmm.
of Iran trading oil in terms of yuan now. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, that's about all the time we have. Again,
All righty.
really appreciate the time. And we'll reconvene maybe Sunday, talk about what what's given what the weekend gives us, any little Trump turds coming in, propaganda nuggets, and see how this evolves, and maybe talk about outlooks for next week.